All right, let's do it.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Green Racing Podcast, Week 3. Well, Episode 3, Week 4. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Raleigh. Raleigh did the Euro thumb count. We had great World Cup racing last weekend. You know, we're a little delayed in getting this out and talking about it, but we're also going to touch on some Google Translate gossip, walk through some Olympic criteria. And I'm at my mom's work computer, so I should have put on a suit jacket and looked extra professional. But hopefully the audio and video quality will be that much more special. So Raleigh,
yes,
take
okay.
Let's dive into Google Translate gossip.
Yeah. So if you're new to the podcast or this idea, I am a dedicated consumer of Nordic sport gossip in various languages. My favorite go-to, if you're also interested in this sort of thing, is skinordique.net. It's a French site. For some reason, they've got someone monitoring the internet closely and writing about it. And some interesting things happened in the wider world of biathlon and cross country. So let's get going. First things first, Franziska Preuss slipped down the stairs when she was in the Grand Bornand and hurt herself.
No.
And the doctors told her she has to take 10 days off. And so maybe I can go back to the original French, but that's just a really bummer thing to have happen to you. We're just kind of living your life and fall down the stairs and hurt yourself at a World Cup, the last one before Christmas. Just sounds like zero fun. And I mean, we've all done it. And you jump in here.
Oh, I can relate to that. Randomly falling on your face at a training camp.
I was also there. Is it Nadine? One of the Canadians was sledding somewhere in Europe, and Nadia, sorry.
She broke her ankle.
Yeah, just busted up her ankle in a sledding accident. That's so sad, and we don't know what will happen.
Anyway, everyone be careful out there is the bottom line. Next up, a little bit of intelligence from the Olympic sites from Maxine Volkov. Maxine Volkov used to be a Russian biathlete, I think, and he is now working for China. And this is his observations from the course at the Olympic venue. The headline is "Impossible to make snowballs." Basically, the conditions are very specific. The snow is totally artificial, very dry, and is impossible to make a snowball with. But the weather changes very quickly and very often. So just easy, normal waxing conditions, nothing to see here. As a result, we can find different snow conditions on one or the other part of the track. And we must not forget the wind. The wind blows hard, often, and constantly. So very fair, consistent, no weird results probably going to happen at the Olympics. He goes into a little bit about the course. The climb planned on the distance loop will be very difficult, but this loop is balanced in terms of profile. So it seems like it's kind of up, down kind of thing. On the other hand, in the sprint, it is easier with the route, which will be the same for the women and the men. For me, it is really a specialist in the discipline who will win. So this last little observation is interesting to me, especially since we just had Dresden, which is a historically very flat course. Everyone's like, oh, well, it's a city sprint and it's just like a real sprinter sprint. And so maybe with this intel, the national federations will maybe weigh their results a little more heavily than they would have otherwise, where it's not, if it's a more of a high speed, someone that needs to close sprint course, that might give some consideration, some people that we might not have thought of, and maybe change some of the distance years programs if they feel like you need to be an out and out sprinter to make an impact there.
And Roland, you were just talking about the cross country course there, not the biathlon, or is that
the cross country sprint course?
Okay.
Yep. Next up, our friend Johannes Dahle, Norwegian biathlete, is not going to the Olympics. His quote: "Sport can be brutal, but that's part of the game." Norwegians have 6 spots for the Olympics, and they're bringing the 2 Grill brothers, Christensen and Ligrid, and then the last spots will be between Bakken, Anderson. This is for the men, Bjorntegard and Bogeveit. So, I mean, Dahle was top 5 in the World Cup overall, and Jake has some thoughts on this. Yeah.
Bogut Veit.
Yeah.
He's still in the mix.
He's still in the mix. Yeah. And the next item also very pertinent to Bogut Veit. So we can get onto that. Luke, you got something some thought on this?
Sorry, I was just
Well,
waiting
he's
for
in-
Jake since he had his hand.
Dolly's in the top 5, and he's not. And how does that
Last
work?
year,
that he's
he was
not-
in the top 5
Oh, okay.
in the overall. So, dizzying heights to just out of it before Christmas. So
Did he race in the IBU Cup in Obertiliac, or was he just
did.
not racing on a weekend?
no, he
Oh.
raced the IBU Cup in Obertiliac.
He raced the individual, missed I think 5, and ended up in the 30s. First race.
Dolly?
Yeah.
Wow, I need to go look at this.
Man, the people's champion, fall from
I know.
heaven.
Yeah. And then speaking of Norwegians, next headline, the best Norwegian biathletes will not go to Ruhpolding. Norwegian teams will be full for the next stage in Overhoff, the last chance for late qualification for some, but then almost all of them will go into pause mode. For the moment, only Roysland, the leader of the women's overall, will go to Bavaria before missing the next stage in Anholtz, with her teammates on the A team returning to a training camp in altitude. She basically, I love this translation. This is my favorite. It's boring for the general classification, but this year the Olympics is the main goal. So she's very bored by this decision, but let's focus on the Olympics.
Can I ask a question based off that?
Yeah.
So are a lot of teams, and Jake, maybe, are you a lot of teams going to altitude here for a little bit before going to Beijing, or trying to get like another altitude block?
I only know what our team is doing, and it's the same thing that the Norwegians are doing for our men anyway. I think the plan is to skip Ruhpolding and go to Martel for altitude and kind of use the Anholtz World Cup as a halfway point in a training camp at altitude before, I think, Beijing departure is like the 27th, 28th, 29th, something like that.
Okay.
So far-reaching consequences potentially for World Cup overall, if that's something that you are interested in. Also, it means that a lot of those IBU Cup guys, including our guy Bogut Veit, probably going to get to race a World Cup.
Okay.
And so you're kind of going to get to see, they're going to fill the start spots, I'm sure. So that's going to be a big influx of IBU Cup, sort of not quite the A-team talent onto the World Cup, and maybe some new Norwegian faces on the IBU Cup too, which is always interesting to see who they pull out of the well and which one of them pop a unreasonably good race.
And in Norwegian, not quite A-team material could just mean parallel but different material.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of in the same vein of stars from last year struggling, our guy Matt Bialysiev is taking a 4-month break from biathlon. He struggled in the first World Cup, went to the IBU Cup, also struggled, and he's going to take 4 months off. He's going to go to Moscow, run a bunch of tests, and then he does promise to race at Russian Nationals in Tumen in March. But he just, like, the body wasn't cooperating, the results weren't there, and he's just pulling the plug, which I don't know.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah, quite the move.
I had some inside intel on that from a Russian source who said that Alesiev apparently just showed up to like the pre-camp at the before the season, just totally out of shape, and they don't really know why. What happened?
Sounds like there's some stuff going on in his life, maybe. Yeah. So, I mean, he was 15th in the overall last year, and this year he's just can't make it happen. Which is a bummer. And then the last thing, little historical note. There's been an ongoing doping case involving Olga Zaitseva from 2014, and the women's World Cup overall result in 2014 was basically just like no one knows who won because of this and like what the ramification results were. And finally, the IBU Cup has decided. So if you're holding your breath, thinking who won the Women's World Cup overall in 2014, Tora Berger and Kaisa Mäkäräinen are going to share it.
They tied for second.
They tied for second. The IBU is washing their hands of this. They basically just said that they can't predict what would have happened if Zaitseva had not been there. And so they're going to give it to them both. So maybe retroactively they make some more money, get another globe for the trophy cabinet. Maybe this influences someone's greatest of all time debate. I don't know. But that was something that was kind of been wheels turning going on for a long time that got resolved.
And who was this
then,
lady? I wasn't following biathlon then.
Olga Zaitseva was a very successful Russian athlete who got caught for doping, was kind of part of like the last really successful of the old Russian biathlon union system.
Okay.
And, still a hero there. As far as they're concerned, she's still, those results counted, I think.
Yeah.
But the IBU has decided that they do not, rightfully so.
Do you know the details on this case, Raleigh?
I don't know the details on this case. I just know that
okay.
it's been just like tied up forever. And it's just one of those things that just kind of goes away, but it keeps happening for everyone still involved. I don't really know what like Tora Berger or Kaiser Mekarainen's thought is on this. Like these competitions happened like 7 years ago. And there's like, oh, by the way, hey, remember all that pressure you were under? Yeah. So you won. You did it. Just a bizarre.
Kaiser win any other overalls though? Wait.
Get money for that?
They must reallocate the money, right? I don't know.
Yeah. But does this mean Kaiser? Because I don't know if did she ever win an overall before,
I'm not sure.
Before or after that?
We'd have to
That
research
would be
it,
really
but
sweet.
Yeah.
yeah.
She won at least one, and then I think she was second to Kuzmina, right, in 2018. But I think she won maybe 2016 or something.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking there was some.
Anyway, so that's kind of cool for them. And I don't know. Other than that, that's all I've got. I think that my takeaways there are number one takeaway is just it's icy out there. Be careful during your holiday break. I'm at home in Maine with my folks and ice everywhere, and I'm just trying not to fall and hurt myself.
All right. Thanks, Raleigh. Thanks for that look into Google Translate gossip. We're going to switch gears a little bit here, or a lot bit, and talk about some U.S. skiing, look at the Olympic criteria. First of all, Elena Sonesson, Zach Ketterson are the Period 1 Super Tour leaders, and they both have accepted Tour de Ski starts. So they're headed over, already in Europe, and preparing for the Tour de Ski, which led to sort of an interesting conversation, or at least a thought process for me, trying to put myself in their shoes as to whether I would have accepted those starts. And which might be a better path towards the Olympics this year, and which might just be a better path for long-term development. So let's see if I can, screen share my desktop. Can you tell me? You can see this. Look at this. All right.
Oh yeah.
So
for folks at home that are maybe listening to this, Luke has pulled up the Olympic selection criteria, and if you have never been in a position to read a international team selection criteria, or if you're a real diehard fan and you've never gotten into this, these documents are always really interesting to me. Number one, from a formatting level, when you read them, you're like, who uses bold here, uses what's uppercase, what's lowercase? It never makes any sense. But also it just kind of seems like you're reading about like I don't know, it's like someone's like unbelievably ironclad prenup, or like you're about to get a new job and they're handing you all this paper and you're just like, oh yeah, I'll write my social security number on this. I have no idea. So we're actually going to try and make sense of this now.
Yeah. And realizing that legalistic document can dramatically affect people's lives and what the dreams that they're pursuing. So we're just going to start here. I am by no means an expert at this, but we're going to start here. Athletes will be nominated to the Olympic team in the order of 1, a top 8 individual final World Cup finishes, which so far, I think on the women's side is Jessie, Rosie, and Haley. And on the men's side is JC. And I don't think anyone else.
What about Ben Ogden? Did he get 8th?
Ben was 12th. He was last in the semi a couple sprints ago, I think. Maybe you're wrong about that, but I think so. So that's the first way that you can automatically qualify. The second way you can get nominated is by discretionary selection, which was a pretty quick fall to discretionary selection. Not that it's bad, but discretionary selection, if we scroll down, has some specifics on how you might get discretion onto the team. The first option is to be a medal-capable athlete. So it's one who has a World Cup podium finish, a top 10 individual World Cup finish, or a World Cup podium finish in a team event.
So I can translate this. This is someone from last year who did really well that they think can win a medal. Something bad happens. They have a terrible season. They get injured. They can't put up the results before the selection period is over. That's why this one exists.
Yeah. The second way you can get discretion is by best predicted finish. They may choose the athlete or athletes who are most likely to finish with the highest placing in the event. And the third way you could get discretion on the team is athletes who maximize team performance. An athlete whose trajectory is such that they may be able to contribute to a medal in a team event, relay and or team sprint. So in my mind, either this first way to get discretion or this third way to get discretion now at least gets Julia Kern onto the team after her and Jesse's impressive second place in the Dresden team sprint.
I would agree.
I also would think that this would get another guy onto the team for a guys team sprint, whether that's Ben Ogden or Kevin Bolger, most likely, I would think.
I
was going to say, what about
last weekend too?
Oh, what was that?
Hannah Halverson 7th last weekend in Dresden.
Yep.
That's right.
Check that.
Thank you. Yes,
Yep.
Thank you. So she will be going under the first criteria of top 8 individual final World Cup finish. And I guess we never talked
So
about
how many slots do we have?
Yes, so we never talked about that. Let's find it. A maximum of up to 8 male and 8 female athletes. I honestly thought it was less than that.
Also, those words are important. A maximum of up to.
Yeah. So they could take less if they wanted to. And 4
Isn't that redundant? Go back to
yes,
your thoughts on length.
It's redundant, but perhaps being redundant in criteria writing is actually a good thing. I don't really know, but perhaps.
There's also just like,
Brown.
there's like also just, the criteria words and phrases hat. They're just like a maximum of up to.
Yeah. Do you think they actually do this with a Mad Lib style where they just like get a blank document or a document with blanks in it and then they just fill in the specifics? And there's like a maximum of up to and
I know for a fact that Raleigh writes his email. Warm regards. That's
Yep, it's a great way to do it.
All right. So then there's caps on sprinters if you're looking here. I don't really want to get into that, to be honest. We're going to keep moving down. After discretionary selection, the third way you can be nominated to the Olympic team is a top 50 World Cup sprint or distance standing, which ends on January 17th. That's when they'll look at the list and see if anyone is in the top 50 in the sprint or distance standings. You can be nominated to the Olympics. Now, the last way you can be nominated to the Olympics is the 2022 championship selection list selection. Great. Maybe some redundancy there in words to Jake, if you were going to say something about that. But this is the Super Tour points list. Yes, Kelsey?
I have a question about the top 50 World Cup sprinter distance standings.
Sure.
Like, how many? I guess not being in cross country lately, I'm wondering like where's the threshold for this? If you look at any cross country race, there's maybe like 80 starters.
Sure.
So yeah. I don't know. I'm just.
Can we do this?
I think the idea is that you have to have scored points, right? So
right.
That's
a good point. Yeah.
You have to have scored points for sure. All right.
Oh boy, we're looking at this points now.
Yeah. Is this gonna give us it? No, this is just fist points.
Yeah.
This is not the World Cup. All right, we're not going to do this.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
not.
gonna do
Yeah.
this.
I'm not Jamie.
And quite frankly, is anyone else? I don't know.
All right. So anyway, this last way you can get nominated to the Olympic team is through the Super Tour points list, which also ends, I think, January 17th, which is after the Sun Valley Super Tours. But really, what we're looking at is so the champion. Really, what we're looking at is nationals, because nationals have bonuses to them. So it's an accumulation of Super Tour points scored during the selection period using the athlete's best 2 finishes. And nationals, as you can see here, are given bonus points. So really, if you win 1 or 2 races at nationals, really in a single discipline, because you either want to be really good at sprinting or you want to be really good at distance, I think, to get selected. But once again, this is the last way you can get selected. So kind of jumping back to Elena and Zach, when we were talking about them being Super Tour leaders, kind of from what I've gathered, they both accepted Tour de Ski starts. And actually Elena wrote a blog, which I didn't read, so I should be more informed. But they think that going over and potentially scoring World Cup points and getting selected either based off of discretion or potentially a top 50 overall world ranking, if they get enough points, would be more likely than winning the Super Tour and then having somebody chosen from the Super Tour, because there's no guarantee that somebody off of this championship's point list will be selected. On the other hand, somebody like our teammate Adam Martin, who's had a distance win, a distance second, if he goes to nationals and wins again and gets the bonus points, seems to me like that would put somebody like him in a really good position to at least be at the top of the list if they get down to this 4th way to select the Olympic team. And there's no guarantee they will, but that's kind of what domestic athletes are looking at right now, is doing well at nationals to put themselves in a position to, if US ski team gets down to this 4th method of selection, to be in a good position for that. And then like Lane and Zach really are the 2 people that are looking at just trying to go over there and score World Cup points who haven't already. Actually, I guess maybe there's a couple people still over there that haven't scored World Cup points that would still be hoping to do that in the Tour de Ski to get selected. Anyone have any thoughts as we've gone over this, or questions or headaches?
Do we know who else is starting the Tour de Ski?
We don't.
I can look this up. But Jake, I'd be interested in your ideas on this from someone who's racing in Europe.
Well, because I was also quite unprepared, I've just been looking at who is ranked in the top 50 in the overall. And can you verify it was top 50 or
what was that?
Not the overall.
It's the top 50 in either sprint or distance.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as it currently stands, granted, it's probably going to change as the Tour de Ski happens and there are a lot more races there and a lot more people racing. But for some reason, I can't find the women's. But for the guys overall right now, most of the sprint or distance. The only guys that aren't are Zandon McMullen. He's 57th on the distance list. David Norris again. So if you can get up there and you can, I guess, get top 30 in a couple sprints, that would be a ticket to get in the top 50. I also don't know the point breakdowns by heart. I don't know. It's a tough thing. I think that cross country skiing is just a different world than biathlon. So I think it's hard for me to say what would I do in this situation if I was someone who had the opportunity to go to the Tour de Ski or not. But I think one thing that's worth saying is that the Tour de Ski is just so many races that, it's a smaller field size. The opportunity to score some points is there. It's historically been an opportunity for people to do well in a smaller field when maybe they wouldn't have in a more competitive World Cup. Combine that with just there being more races, it seems like, especially if you're a good sprinter, I think that could be a prime opportunity, maybe for a distance athlete like Adam Martin, super good in 15K Classic. I think if I was Adam, I'd be pretty confident going into nationals that I can post a really good result in that race. So maybe it's not worth it to go the Tour de Ski route for someone like Adam.
Okay, so here's the roster, if you were wondering. Zach Ketterson, Super Tour leader, JC Schoonmaker, Ben Ogden, Kevin Bolger, Gus Schumacher, Luke Yeager, Logan Hanlon, Adam Martin, the alternate. Women, Elena Sonneson, Jessie Diggins, Rosie Brennan, Haley Swarble, Julia Kern, Hannah Halverson, Sophia Laukley, Novi McCabe, Catherine Ogden, and Rosie Frankowski is the alternate. So my take on Tour de Ski versus nationals is, I think Jake's analysis is good, that the potential to have a good race in a smaller field is definitely there, especially with, as the tour goes on, people are going to drop out to optimize their preparation for the Olympics, or potentially, different people are going to do different things for kind of what they need to do later in the season. Yeah, Kelsey?
Well, I just pulled up the cup rankings for women.
Okay, yep.
You have to go to filter and then select women. It's not
Great.
It's not very intuitive. Basically, everyone on the team is top 50, down to, let's see, Sophia Laukley is and B is just sitting out of it in 55th in distance. And then Catherine Ogden and Sydney Palmer Ledger are a little bit further out in the 60s. So it definitely seems like the Tour de Ski gives a pretty reasonable chance at but if you think about that though, it's like Rosie, Jessie, Julia, Haley, Hannah, who am I missing? Not many spots left. So if they can take a maximum of
I also think that there's the other thing to consider with Tour de Ski is it's kind of a risk because it's so many races, right? Like if you get over there and something goes wrong, your form isn't there, or you get a cold, or you have some sort of crash or something, you get injured, like that's like, it all happens so fast, and if something goes wrong, like it's really going to compound really fast, right? And so I think it's a risk, but I also think that, like, if you're confident and you're just going to push all your chips in the middle of the table, then it makes sense because the opportunity is there. At the same time, I feel like nationals is a situation that if you're a domestic athlete, you have a little more control over, right? Like you're going to a place like Soldier Hollow where you've probably raced before. It's less travel. You have a good training block to get ready. You're going to have your club coach there. You're going to have your teammates. You're going to be able to, optimize for that and put yourself in a position to get to the top of a list that, if there's a spot for you and they fill it, you're going to go. So I can see both approaches. I think for the women, it makes a lot of sense to get to Tour de Ski so you can get a head-to-head comparison with the people that are maybe already qualified or on the brink of qualifying and maybe have a little discretionary edge. So when they get to that second slot, they can be like, well, okay, maybe you didn't score points, but you were dang close to whoever who also, was in the same race with the same stuff as you. And maybe because of that, you're going to go. So I don't know. It will be really interesting to see, number one, what the field size is, what the spread is, what different nations do, and also how well Zach and Elena can convert their domestic prowess to European competition, European snow, European time change, and US ski team system and not their club system.
Yeah, so U.S. Nationals should be exciting. Seems like it's going to be super competitive. Lots of people are going to be there, and we'll definitely, cover it in a podcast in a couple weeks, maybe as it's happening or right after it's happened. I guess we could do a little preview what to look for, but I guess we kind of touched on some of those things. I did want to just highlight a couple things if you're sitting at home at Christmas and need to get caught up on racing. the biathlon races from France this last weekend were super exciting to watch, and just lots of good energy. Jake, you got to race there, and our parents actually went and watched, and it just seemed like a really cool place to spectate, a cool place to race, super energetic. Also, the races were exciting. I thought all the pursuit races, both men and women, were super exciting. The Oberg sisters get on the podium. Honestly, I teared up a little bit when they got on the podium together and gave each other hugs. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful sporting moment. And some great French wins on the guy side, which just, once again, would be super cool to do at home, both for Jacqueline and QFM. Just once again, just feeling the feels when those things happen, and the French fans went crazy for them. And then Dresden, honestly, Dresden was interesting. I think how I would want to watch Dresden is to go and put together both a highlight and a bloopers reel from Dresden, and then watch it like that, because it was a lot of just watching people do the same thing over and over. It was kind of like a not exciting loop on bad snow, super fast, super sketchy, just kind of like weird ski racing. But then it was just highlighted by these moments of just extreme, both hilarity and great skiing, and upsets and setbacks, falling, people going between each other's legs. Like, just the U-turn was hilarious. So that's how I would want to watch it. So if you can withstand the kind of just boring laps on laps, there was good ski racing in there, which I really appreciated. And obviously, Julie and Jesse got second. Hannah Halverson had a great race. I thought it was also cool to once again laugh. Or I think one of these times we talked about Russia 2 winning or beating Russia 1. This time in the men's team sprint, Norway 2 beats Norway 1, and it's Evan Northug, Petter's younger brother, and Thomas Larson, who just came onto the scene with the second place in Lillehammer, which was cool again to see another feeling the feels of the underdogs taking over. And I think in the post-race interview, I think it was Thomas Larson called themselves the underdogs, and thought that it was great. It was a great feeling to have, which I loved that he just said that outright. So some cool racing.
Owning it.
What was that?
Oh, I was saying he was owning it.
Yeah.
Also, just a tiny touch of irony having a Norwegian call themselves an underdog. I do appreciate that.
Great point, but within the system, I mean, not to,
within the system, absolutely.
Within the
Well,
system.
they're an underdog if they don't wear the national team suit. But was Larson wearing the national team suit this time?
This time, Larson was wearing the national team suit, but in Lillehammer he wasn't. And
he went from 30th to second, which I find just still so impressive that he was 30th in the qualifier and ended up second. So and I know, this might not mean as much to other people, but it sort of reminded me of when Gavin McEwen and I were team number 2 in the Middlebury team sprint for the EISA Festival, and upset Dartmouth won, and got to outsprint my now teammate Braden Becker, which is just great to kind of bring up every now and then. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's that.
I watched some of Dresden. My thoughts were similar. I thought that my analysis also includes that Julia Kern, I thought, was really calm, did really well tactically, and showed really good closing speed. Jesse, for me, was maybe a little frenetic, got pretty unlucky with some crashes, but had excellent fitness and was able to get back on. But we were talking about Olympic selection. I was really impressed with Julia's poise and confidence in these fast head-to-head situations. So I think that ability to contribute to the team in the discretionary bullet point was notable. I also was thinking as I was watching that about the context of the Olympics and the report from the Russian guy who's now the Chinese coach that went over in Google Translate gossip about it being a high-speed sprinters course. And I think that maybe that makes those races a little bit more interesting to kind of look over. And also, goofy, really weird. It's always mind-blowing to me when I see like World Cup skiers looking like kind of Bambi on ice on their skis and like snow plowing into corners, and you're just like, man, like what would I look like on there? Probably not great. They're still, skiing unbelievably fast and ripping through these like rollers, and it's obviously really icy. And like when they look uncomfortable, like, man, it must be really fast and pretty uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
I think if you go back and watch those races, kind of keep that in mind. We're like, okay, Maya Douglas looks a little sketchy on this corner, and like that means it's probably pretty sketchy. Yeah, I sort of, Germany has a lot of COVID restriction, and I think that the Dresden races would have been a lot more fun had there been 3 rows of people on the fences.
Yeah.
Because it's weird when they're skiing by like the river and like these really static things. You can't really tell how fast they're going. You know, it's like fist camera angle, like, oh, something cool is happening, and we're gonna switch to the other angle where you can't really see what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think those races, like, you know, live as a spectacle would have been pretty cool, but like not having the crowd and just the fist production kind of neuters their impact. The exact opposite with the biathlon races in France, though. Jake, the atmosphere there, tell us a little bit about it. It looked incredible on the TV.
Dude, I thought for the sprint races Thursday, Friday, that it was just so cool having so many fans. And then the weekend was just like, there were 2 like big V1 hills on the course that kind of like almost went up on the hillside. And on the hillside, there were just like, that's where all the fans, not all the fans, but a bunch of them would go. And so they could just, it was almost like a built-in kind of amphitheater, right? Or stands, because it was on a hillside. So, you know, not just being like, you could go out on maybe that long climb, but on that hill, it was unbelievable. Like, you know, I'd say even like 40 rows of fans up onto the hill. And then you can see everything up there. So also just totally different than Germany. So Germany is the old fans that are singing Sweet Caroline at the top of their lungs and, you know, having beer and cheese. I'm sure there was a lot of World Cup as well, but these were like much younger fans that seemed to be more the kind that would like maybe went to Le Grand Bornand to go ski touring in the morning and then come down and watch the Biathlon World Cup in the afternoon. So a lot of kids and a lot of people in like their 30s, I would guess.
That's cool. Jake, mom and dad were.
They also don't just cheer for.
Sorry, there's a little bit
Go
of.
ahead, Luke.
Mom and dad were saying that when you were finishing the mass start in the back, that you interacted with the fans a little bit.
Yeah, I did. Maybe a little embarrassing being in last, but it was cool because they were all cheering for me. So I up one of the V1 hills, I just like sprinted as hard as I could, and then like got to the top and was like, "Come on!" And then they all went nuts, which was awesome, and started chanting USA. So that was kind of cool, even though I was in 60th place, like 15 seconds off the back.
Yeah.
So
Well, something to remember.
I watched these races, and speaking of that V1 hill, there was, I think, a pretty cool moment for the French team where you had on that hill in the guys' races and in the women's races, you had Vincent Viteau. Vincent Viteau is a world champion cross-country skier for France and is like a big like Nordic sporting hero who I think 2 springs ago was hired to be the cross-country coach for the men's national team, right? So you have like Vincent Viteau and his like whole French getup, just like yelling at Emilien Jacquelin, and like all the fans know who he is, you know, and he's standing there. In the French national team production, they have like this camera on him, you know, and like he's reacting to all the hits, and when it's clear that like Fillon Maillet or Jacquelin's gonna win, he's like running down the hill, and like all the fans are just like going crazy, and he's amping him up, and it's just like, yeah, like Luke said, I can't imagine what it's like to be at home. And I feel like the equivalent for that for us would be like, you know, Chris Freeman, you know, like, you know, cheering for like like Vincent Bonacci or something, you know, that he's like, you know, brought along, like, you know, taken over, you know, everyone's just like, yeah. So I don't know. So just those kind of like little things within that program are really cool. My impression of the racing was also that everyone really fed off of that, and people were just swinging for the fences, which was really cool to see. You know, the French team really upped their game. You saw really super aggressive racing in the mass start and the pursuit from QFM, but also from Amelia and Jacqueline, and just really going for it early in the mass start. And the same thing in the women's race with the Swedish women and Julia Simone just absolutely going for it on the track early in a race, which is not something you usually see in a mass start race because it's usually a little more tactical. And people didn't really know what to do. Like when Jacqueline was at the front and just drilling it at lap 2, like all the guys are kind of looking at each other like, are we supposed to chase this down? Like, is this part of a plan? Like, what's going on here? And the same thing in the women's race where you saw, you know, everyone with strong impetus at the front, even on the first lap, and then people just going side by side, just, you know, it looked like a race that everyone was locked in on the whole time and was full intensity the whole time. And that's not always something you see, especially in the mass starts where everyone's like, okay, we're going to be a little tactical, you know, shoot well.
Yeah.
It's going to go really fast at the end. So a super intense weekend all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got to wrap up here soon. But one thing about, sorry, Jake, you can go and then I'll wrap it up.
Sorry, I'm on delay. Yeah, the thing I was so impressed with was the execution by the French in that, especially in QFM in the pursuit and Jacqueline in the mass start. Like, I don't know. I felt like Jacqueline going into that mass start, like, was the favorite in a way. I mean, he's just like kind of a 4-stage gamer when it comes to like big races. But still, like, going to training every day during that World Cup, and you have like the French fans at training cheering for hits and misses for the French athletes.
Really?
Like, the pressure is on them to perform these races. Yeah, so the pressure is like totally on, and they just came through in a huge way. And the feeling that they had to perform well in front of the home crowd, it was amazing. But also knowing that they did it under huge pressure, even bigger. So yeah, pretty impressive.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, when I was watching Jacqueline's mass start performance, he was executing his obvious race strategy, which he has been working on the whole year since I watched him in the mass start in the season start races in Shushin, which was to get a gap on skis, go into the range, shoot fast, and execute. And if he hits the targets, he has an even greater lead. Maybe he has time to miss one, but putting the pressure on people going to the range. And I feel like he did that in Shushin when I watched, and then he has done that in World Cups and it hasn't worked yet. And then it just worked. He had the chance to miss one, but every time he got a gap on skis, went in the range, executed. And he's just been like hammering it the whole year. I feel like it seems like something he decided at the beginning of the year, and he's just stuck to it with confidence, even when it hasn't worked, which I appreciate. So to wrap up, I was just reminded, I'm feeling the sports energy. I'm feeling the competition. We had great friends in France. We're heading to the Olympics. One thing, or I wanted to share a quote from Phil Knight's book, the guy, the starter of Nike, his book Shoe Dog. And he writes, like books, sports give people a sense of having lived other lives, of taking part in other people's victories and defeats. When sports are at their best, the spirit of the fan merges with the spirit of the athlete. And in that convergence, in that transference, is the oneness that mystics talk about. Boom.
Whoa, that's deep.
I love it.
Thanks,
And Jake drinks to that. Yeah, so we're going to look for more of that fan athlete convergence, the victories, the defeats, as we go forward here. We got a little holiday break, and then we're really into the heart of the season after period one reflections. So thanks for your guys' thoughts. Hope everyone has a good Christmas and good holiday break, and we will reconvene after the next races.
Hey, enjoy the winter time.
Can't wait. Thanks, Luke.
Hopefully you get to ski.
Thanks, guys.
wherever you are.
Yeah. All right.